The 428 Cobra Jet should have lost. Every magazine said so. Every dyno sheet from Plymouth said so. The Hemi was untouchable. It didn't lose. And the people who built both cars knew exactly why. They just never wanted you to find out. Ford rated the Cobra Jet at 335 horsepower. 335. In 1968, when that number hit the press, Chevrolet laughed. Plymouth laughed harder. The Hemi was rated at 425. That gap, 90 horsepower on paper, was supposed to end the conversation before it started. The drag strip doesn't care about paper. By the time car and driver ran the quarter mile in 1968, the Cobra Jet had clocked 13.56 seconds at 106 miles per hour. Stock street tires, one driver. That number put it right on top of the Hemi, and Detroit had no answer that didn't start with admitting they had been lying. This is the full story. The engines, the real numbers, the race, and the verdict that changed how Detroit rated horsepower for the next decade. Ford didn't build the 428 Cobra Jet by accident. This engine was a weapon built specifically to end Plymouth's dominance on the street and on the strip. The Ford 28 cubic inch displacement wasn't new. Ford had been running Ford 28s in the Thunderbird and Galaxy since 1966, but this version was different. Ford's engineers took the Police Interceptor 428 heads, cast iron, big port, already proven under extreme load, and bolted them onto the Cobra Jet block. Then they added a 735 CFM Holley carburetor, an aluminum medium riser intake manifold, and a free-flowing exhaust. The result breathed. Real horsepower, independent dynos put it between 410 and 440 horsepower. Ford's own engineers estimated closer to 410. So why did Ford say 335? Insurance. In 1968, if you rated your street car above 400 horsepower, insurance companies hammered young buyers with premiums that killed the sale. Ford wanted the Cobra Jet in as many driveways as possible. 335 horsepower was a lie built into the sticker, a deliberate, calculated corporate lie, and every engineer at Dearborn knew it. The Cobra Jet debuted at the 1968 NHRA Winter Nationals in Pomona. First race, stock class. Ford entered 50 identical Cobra Jets. They won their class on the first attempt. The NHRA had to reclassify the Cobra Jet before the next event. That's how fast it was. Plymouth knew exactly what Ford had built. They'd been through it before. The 426 Hemi had been the undisputed king of the drag strip since 1964. Race Hemi, street Hemi. It didn't matter. When the Hemi showed up, everyone else was racing for second place. The street Hemi, the version that went into the 1968 Roadrunner, was a detuned version of the race engine. Detuned for reliability, still ruthless. Dual Carter, AFB 4-barrel carburetors, sitting on a cross-ram intake. Hemispherical combustion chambers, the design that gave the engine its name and its advantage. The Hemi chamber geometry allowed larger valves, better airflow, and a more complete burn. On paper, it was the most efficient combustion chamber design available to any American streetcar buyer in 1968. Plymouth rated it at 425 horsepower. And unlike Ford, Plymouth was actually telling something closer to the truth. Independent tests put the street Hemi between 430 and 460 horsepower. The Roadrunner itself was a masterstroke. Plymouth stripped out every luxury item, put the Hemi in a lightweight B-body, and sold it for under $3,000. It was a pure drag car with license plates. Plymouth knew exactly what they were building. But the Roadrunner had one problem the brochures never mentioned: weight. The 1968 Hemi Roadrunner tipped the scales at 3,400 pounds. The Cobra Jet Mustang, same year, street trim, weighed 3,240 pounds, a 160-pound difference. On a drag strip, that is not nothing. Now, here is where the spec war gets brutal. The Cobra Jet made its peak torque at 3,400 RPM. Broad, flat, street-friendly. The Hemi peaked higher, 490 pound-per-feet at 4,000 RPM. What that means on the street: the Cobra Jet launched harder, off idle. The Hemi pulled stronger once it was spinning. Two completely different power characters. And the Mustang's shorter wheelbase, 108 inches to the Roadrunner's 1/16, made it more sensitive to that low RPM torque hit. It wanted to rotate, drivetrain choices sealed the argument. The Cobra Jet came with a close ratio 4-speed or a drag-optimized C6 automatic. Ford built it for the strip. The Hemi Roadrunner also offered a 4-speed, but the Torque Flight automatic behind the Hemi was arguably the best automatic transmission in the world in 1968. Two cars, two engines, both understated on paper, both capable of numbers their manufacturers refused to publish. So, what happened when they actually raced? Car and Driver, Motor Trend, and Hot Rod magazine all ran independent quarter-mile tests in 1968. Their results didn't agree on everything, but they agreed on one thing. The Cobra Jet ran 13.56 at 106 in Car and Driver's test. Motor Trend posted 13.9 at 103. Different driver, different tune. Hot Rod got 13.7 at 105. The Hemi Roadrunner, Motor Trend ran 13.5 at 105. Car Life got 13.45 at 105.5. Consistent, brutal, exactly what Plymouth promised. The gap between them was less than 0.2 of a second. On a drag strip that decides a race in 13 seconds, 0.2 is everything. But here is what those magazine tests don't tell you. The Hemi Roadrunner tests were run with the Street Hemi in full street tune, cold air intake, stock exhaust, full weight. The Cobra Jet tests, particularly Car and Driver's record 13.86, were run with a car that had already been broken in. Looser engine tolerances, more free. It mattered. There's also the matter of street temperature and atmospheric conditions. The Hemi's open-element dual-carb setup was sensitive to heat. On a cold morning run, it pulled hard. On a hot afternoon, it dropped off. The Cobra Jet's enclosed induction system was more consistent. Ford designed it that way. They knew the Hemi's weakness. When the cars raced head-to-head under consistent conditions, same track, same temperature, same driver skill level, the results were inside a coin flip. The Hemi launched harder with a skilled driver who could feather the throttle through the power band. The Cobra Jet was more forgiving. It did the work for you. That difference mattered enormously for the street buyer. Not everyone who bought a Hemi Roadrunner could drive a Hemi Roadrunner. The Cobra Jet forgave mistakes. It didn't punish a bad launch. And on the street, most races were decided in the first 3 seconds. Now, the NHRA, they were watching all of this very carefully. When the Cobra Jet swept stock eliminator at the 1968 Winter Nationals, the NHRA moved it up in class weight break. In other words, they handicapped it because it was too fast for the horsepower Ford claimed. The NHRA couldn't officially call Ford a liar, but they adjusted the class as if the car made 100 more horsepower than Ford admitted, because it did. The Hemi had already been through this game. Plymouth had been reclassed multiple times since 1964. Every time the rules changed, Chrysler found a way back to the front. But by 1968, even the Hemi was being pushed, not just by the Cobra Jet, by the changing physics of the muscle car arms race. The real verdict from 1968 isn't just who won a specific quarter mile, it's what these two cars meant for everything that came after. The Cobra Jet proved that a smaller displacement engine, engineered correctly, could compete directly with the legendary Hemi. That was heresy in 1968. Ford had done it without a hemisphere, without dual carbs, without the mystique. Just engineering, flow data, and a willingness to put the real parts where they mattered. And the Hemi proved something too. It proved that a decade-old combustion chamber design, conceived in 1951, raced in 1964, was still the benchmark everything else had to beat. The Hemi didn't get beaten in 1968. It got matched, and being matched by a 335 horsepower Ford was, in Plymouth's world, a form of defeat. Here's the final split on the numbers. In controlled back-to-back testing, the Hemi Roadrunner edged the Cobra Jet by roughly 1/10 of a second, but only with an experienced driver. With an average driver, the guy who just bought his first muscle car, the Cobra Jet won more often than not. The data backs this up. The magazines back this up. The verdict: on paper, Hemi wins. On the street, on an average day with an average driver, Cobra Jet. The drag strip doesn't lie. The manufacturers did. Legacy. This is where the story gets permanent. The Ford 28 Cobra Jet ran in production from 1968 to 1970. 3 model years. Ford then replaced it with the 429 Cobra Jet, which made even more power and continued the lineage. The 426 Hemi stayed in production through 1971. When emissions regulations hit, the Hemi couldn't survive in street trim. Plymouth pulled it. The king abdicated to the EPA. The insurance crisis of the early 1970s hit both cars equally. By 1972, a young man couldn't afford to insure either of these machines. The muscle car era didn't end. It was strangled. The horsepower underrating scandal didn't go unpunished. The SAE established new standardized net horsepower ratings in 1972, ratings that stripped out the optimistic gross figures Detroit had been hiding behind for years. Under the new ratings, a 1972 Corvette that once claimed 350 horsepower was suddenly rated at 255. The gap between what Detroit claimed and what the cars actually made was finally on record. Both the Cobra Jet and the Hemi Roadrunner forced that conversation. Their strip results, impossible under their stated horsepower, made it undeniable that the industry was lying. On the auction block today, a numbers-matching 1968 428 Cobra Jet Mustang in R-code trim sells for between $80,000 and $140,000, depending on options and condition. A numbers-matching 1968 426 Hemi Roadrunner. That's a different conversation entirely. Clean examples have crossed $200,000. Hemi Roadrunners with factory documentation have hit $300,000. The Hemi commands more money. It always has. The Mystique outlasted the car. The Cobra Jet wins on the street. The Hemi wins at auction. Even the collector market reflects the original argument. What survives today is the knowledge that in 1968, Detroit was playing a game, inflating some numbers, deflating others, to control insurance costs, NHRA classifications, and public perception, all at once. The drag strip exposed every single one of those games. It always does. The Ford 28 Cobra Jet and the 426 Hemi Roadrunner were the two most honest cars Detroit built in 1968, honest in performance, even when the stickers lied. They defined an era. They forced rule changes. They made manufacturers accountable, eventually. And they gave a generation of Americans the most honest argument ever settled at a traffic light. One engine from Ford, one from Plymouth, both understated, both dangerous, both permanent. If you want the next chapter, the 429 Super Cobra Jet versus the 446 pack, that video is already on this channel. The fight didn't stop here. Subscribe, because on this channel, we don't repeat what the brochure said. We find out what the cars actually did.